Microsoft is or was known for its legendary operating systems and the Xbox. But not everything was perfect. The Windows Phone would fall into that category. Grab a bag of chips, because there's a lot to unpack when it comes to why the Windows Phone failed. Hey everyone. Well, the Windows Phone was a failed attempt to establish itself in the smartphone market, but it fell short by a wide margin. But let's turn back the clock to 2007. After all, a few things happened this year. The PS3 came to Europe, Rihanna spent 45 weeks on the charts with Don't Stop the Music, and Steve Jobs announced the iPhone. It was supposed to revolutionize the cell phone market because it combined 3 devices into one and had a large touchscreen. The presentation was perfect, and it really seemed as if Apple had its next big hit. Back then the market share was distributed quite differently than it is today. In 2007, Nokia had the largest share with its Symbian OS, followed by Microsoft. And in 2006 and 2007, Microsoft was a major player in the mobile market alongside Nokia. In 2007, Microsoft had a 42% market share in the US with Windows Mobile, thanks to all the PDAs and cell phones running Windows Mobile. And if Apple was uttering in the future with the iPhone, it would make sense to follow suit, right? But Steve Ballmer, the Microsoft CEO at the time, had this to say about the iPhone.
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world.
So in a nutshell, he thought it was an expensive joke and that it wouldn't be successful. And to be honest, it was not a lie that this phone was expensive, as Ballmer already said. So financially it was expensive, but what about the success? At the end of 2007, Apple had a 5% global market share, which was still a joke compared to Nokia and Microsoft. But the thing is, the competition isn't sleeping. Then came 2008 and Google had finished developing its own system called Android. Google had already started working on Android since November 2007, and they saw the huge potential in the smartphone market with a large touchscreen. The first Android phone was the HTC Dream, which featured a physical keyboard, something Ballmer has criticized the iPhone for lacking. So Google had a smartphone system similar to iOS. Apple released a more affordable iPhone 3G in 2008. And what about Microsoft and Nokia? Well, Nokia released a classic cell phone called the N95, which was supposed to revolutionize the market with its 3D features. Microsoft stuck firmly to Windows Mobile 6 and its approach with the other products it offered. But the fact is, those phones look outdated compared to what was available with an iPhone or Android. By the end of 2008, the iPhone's market share had nearly doubled and was no longer that far behind Windows Mobile, which held 12%. Okay, but let's fast forward to 2010, because a lot happened there. Well, everything has really changed once again in the smartphone market. Apple has released the iPhone 4 and Samsung is now in the mix with its highly successful Galaxy S2. And Microsoft has finally realized that smartphones with large touchscreens are the future and has unveiled Windows Phone 7. One might even think that Microsoft had finally come up with something really good with this system, since Microsoft's market share is now only about 4%. At the end of 2010, Apple had a 15% share and Google had 30%. And what did Microsoft come up with? A system that looks new but has received a lot of negative criticism. The Office suite was very limited compared to the desktop version, which makes sense to some extent, but it was even more restricted than in Windows Mobile 6, its predecessor. Outlook emails couldn't be synced and many Bluetooth profiles weren't supported, and inserting a microSD card voided the warranty and required a full factory reset of the phone. And then there's the fact Windows Phone 7 was launched in a market where everyone had already bought either an iPhone or an Android device, which made it more difficult to introduce yet another mobile operating system. On top of that, app developers have already prioritized iOS or Android and don't want to develop for yet another platform which no one is buying anyway. In 2010, Google had 130,000 apps available, iOS had 300,000, and Windows Phone had just 5,000 apps available. And it wasn't just software developers who struggled. Hardware manufacturers also had to meet minimum requirements for Windows Phone. All of this makes sense, but the biggest issue was that a license fee of $18 to $24 had to be paid for every device sold. Manufacturers weren't allowed to customize the system, which also was a big criticism. Since Android was customizable for manufacturers, free and the most widely used system, it made more sense to sell Android devices. Then Microsoft decided to team up with Nokia, which with its Symbian OS was no longer the king of the hill either. They were phones that focused on a good camera and attractive design. Yeah, and I have the Lumia 800 here, which is one of the best Windows Phone 7 phones, and it definitely has something for its in terms of design and everything. Unfortunately, this is the one in the black case, but it was also available in many other more vibrant colors, but hey, from a optical standpoint, it looks really awesome. But it just has the catch that this is a Windows Phone. Well, Microsoft wasn't willing to leave things as they were with the software. So in 2012 they released Windows Phone 8 along with new devices for sale. And yes, you had to buy a new phone. You couldn't upgrade the Windows Phone 7 phone you bought in 2010, which was a huge slap in the face for customers. Technically speaking, this was the case because Windows Phone 8 is based on a new kernel, the NT kernel. Previously, it was built on top of Windows CE, which was a minimal system designed specifically for mobile devices like these. It was just harder to develop apps for it, battery life was poor, and memory management was a disaster. So at least when it comes to apps, Microsoft had made it easier, at least for developers, to create apps for Windows Phone. But the customers who bought a Windows Phone 7 have to buy a new phone for Windows Phone 8. While iOS and Android continued to see steadily rising user numbers. And by 2012, Android had reached a market share of nearly 70%, iOS 20%, and Microsoft nearly 3%. The last Windows Phone operating system was Windows Phone 10, which was aligned with Windows 10, another attempt by Microsoft to create a top-notch system. The Lumia 950 showed what a Windows Phone could be, with lots of useful features. Well, that phone almost deserved its own review here, but the lifestyles adapted seamlessly and overall the system is snappy. The camera was one of the best on the market for a 2015 smartphone, and with Windows Hello, it offered a smart option to unlock the phone using iris recognition. And there was Continuum, where you could connect a dock and turn your phone into a desktop PC. Having a Windows PC with you at all times turned out to be a dream come true, but it was really just a phone on a big screen. It was just sad and a major point of criticism that it was so limited. At least you could continue using your phone normally while it was connected with Continuum. But in the end it all came to nothing. The Windows Phone was a massive money loser and was eventually declared dead by Microsoft in 2017. Within 10 years, Microsoft had reduced its US market share from 42% to 0%. And to sum it all up, Microsoft dismissed the new technology, which was the iPhone, as a joke. They released an unfinished system that was too late, app development was too difficult on Windows Phone 7, Office integration was inconsistent, update management led to people just buy a new phone for a new software version, and there was very limited app support. Plus, the smartphone market had become incredibly competitive, and it feels like an even better phone comes out every day, so there's simply no room for mistakes. And Microsoft made a ton of mistakes with the Windows Phone, which is why you saw it here on Failed Tech here on LumoLeo. And well, feel free to subscribe for this channel here, and here you can find my last video, and here you can find a video about what made the N64 so powerful. And that's all from me, and I'll say, we'll see us.